Um, Thank you for joining us for the, I think it's the 9th Ciocca Center virtual happy hour since the beginning of the crisis. For those that I haven't met before, my name is Brian Becker. I'm the Director of Small Business Outreach at the Ciocca Center for Principal Entrepreneurship at Catholic U. We're very pleased to have some representatives from the Department of Small and Local Business Development join us today to talk about what they've been doing throughout the crisis and let you know the resources they have available, as well as what they are planning and what kind of conversations they're having in terms of reopening the city. So, you know, from the very beginning, we have tried to bring in the best speakers in the area to talk about topics relevant to you as small business owners and supporters of small businesses. And I think at this point, though we're not quite ready, it's ready to really start planning in earnest what that reopening would look like. So as the weather's gotten nicer, you know, I think we've gotten a little bit more clarity about the challenges that we're facing. And so DSLBD and hopefully Director Whitfield here in a couple of minutes will be here to answer those questions. So in the meantime, I mentioned just a minute ago, but if you're not speaking or actively asking a question, please go ahead and mute your phone or your audio. And we'll get started here in just a moment. It does look as if Director Whitfield is able to join us, so we will go ahead and proceed. So Director Kristi Whitfield is not only the head of the Department of Small and Local Business Development, but is an entrepreneur and business owner herself. So when I heard her speak about 6 months ago, she displayed, I think, a boots on the ground knowledge of the same challenges that all the businesses we work with in the Ciocca Center face. And I think that she's uniquely equipped to help lead our city response to what's happening with the small business space. And we're so thrilled to have her tonight. So Director Whitfield, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I think that she's, so if you would, if you could just kind of run us through, give us a little bit of some insight as to how you and your agency, from the very beginning, and call it mid-March, started to think about what challenges were immediately obvious, but what challenges were to come, as here we are now in the middle of May.
Wow. Well, I think, you know, it's been quite a wild ride, I think, for us at DSLBD. And thank you, first of all, thank you for having me. And I want to acknowledge a few members of my amazing team. And I see a few friends here on the line. Say hello to some familiar faces, and those are some faces I hope to get to know in the course of the evening tonight. You know, it was like the craziest thing, that like the tidal wave that you wondered when it was coming, right? And so you see this happening around the world. I think the first thing that happened soon after the first stay-at-home order, our first order of business really was applying for federal assistance from the, you know, right after the stay-at-home order. And so we worked with the mayor very quickly to apply for federal assistance, because we knew that our businesses were going to need federal assistance. You know, it's like, you know that you don't know. You know, that's the thing that it's like, I think sometimes just knowing what you do and knowing what you don't know. So DSLBD worked, I think, very quickly on behalf of Mayor Bowser and you know, in concert with the business community, in concert with the deputy mayor, to apply to the feds for assistance to get our small businesses at the front of the line for the SBA resources that we knew were coming down the pike. And so Washington was the first city in the region to be eligible for the SBA resources. And so that, I think, was our sort of first call, you know, our first course of action. And then I think, like everyone, this has been a very iterative process. You have heard the mayor say that small business is the backbone of the local economy. I think we are seeing it play out in this crisis. We see what is happening, you know, when you are forced to shut people, you know, shut the city down. The stay at home has impacted and had repercussions throughout our city in ways I think that in ways that we feared and ways that we didn't fear. DSLBD worked, night and day with people as they were applying for different types of resources, but we've also been working with our main streets. The main streets have been working to change the way that they are servicing our small businesses. I think a lot of times the main streets do a lot of work with placemaking, and that quickly became evident that that was not going to be the course of action. So then figuring out, hey, if you're not going to be having Porch Fest in Rhode Island Avenue, if you're not going to be doing these types of things, my conversation with the Main Street directors was in a very simple way. Well, that means that you have resources that we can allocate and move into the small business community. And so those Main Street directors, and I see one is on the phone with us here. So hello there, Edwin. Those Main Street directors really work to repurpose those funds and make them available as grant funds to support the Main Street directors. Look at this. So as we are socially distancing, this is my son. I'm not right now, please. I'm begging you. So, I think making sure that we are serving our main streets, our local businesses, I think money is what is on everyone's minds, and we wanted to make sure that getting money into the hands of the small businesses in every venue that we had possible was, I think, at the top of mind. Robust Retail was a pool of grants that closed at DSLBD on March 15th. So many people, this had been open for months, and they had interesting ideas about ways that they wanted to pivot and thrive and do different things with their businesses. Well, then the world changed. And so we worked very quickly with our businesses to say, okay, in an entirely different universe, then how do you need this money right now? So we scored that money, we scored those grants, and we awarded those grants as quickly as we possibly could, those funds. And I'm really, really proud of the team. This was for us, a big amount of money. It was initially it was $400,000. And then the mayor and the deputy mayor ultimately augmented those funds, but we were able to ultimately award almost $800,000. And we got all of that money out, I think, within a month. And so that was really, excuse me one second. Sir, please, not right now. My life, working mom. Daddy, I'm sure is busy. Daddy's busy. And so, yeah, sir, if you ever want to watch TV again in your life, you're going to leave right now. Go right now. Go right now. Goodbye.
Believe me, we have similar discussions in my household hourly, it seems.
All right. Thank you, my love. I'm like, Daddy knew I had a meeting at 5 o'clock. This is co-parenting at its finest. This is co-parenting at its finest. All right. So.
But let's talk about that for a second.
How about raising two children?
Many entrepreneurs, I think, find themselves running their own businesses because it fits best with their lives, and they're able to give themselves the flexibility. Now, that might mean they're working at odd hours and those kinds of things, but it seems like a lot of the businesses that we're talking to are it was hard enough for them to find the hours of the day allocated just so, but particularly with these challenges, what do you think might be some strategies moving ahead where we can support some of the entrepreneurs who either are of an alternative demographic that maybe isn't cut out for a 9-to-5 job, that whether they're parenting or whether they're single parenting or whether they're simply that's not their mindset. How can we better support the entrepreneurs who are accustomed to having at least the schools and other times during the day to rely upon for childcare?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think step one is to realize that everyone is balancing 1 million other things. Step two is to meet people exactly where they are and then operate in a way that is extremely flexible, right? And so put things online in ways that are maybe, recorded, pre-recorded, to make sure you can, or if you're going to do a live WebEx, maybe do it after bedtime or do it during times when people can get to it, when they are, 9 to 5 used to mean one thing, means something entirely different now. I think that people that are, balancing it all means all at one time now, right? And so we are having Zoom calls while doing laundry, while homeschooling, while paying bills, while, the dog barks. And earlier today, one of the batteries on one of my smoke detectors started beeping. And, and then if you're lucky, maybe getting a delivery of groceries. And if not, then you're also shopping and figuring out what that means. And I think that, it has to be accessible, it has to be affordable, if not free, and it has to be, probably pre-recorded and able to be repeated again, because a third of it is going to be missed. And then the people that you're doing this for probably can only hear every third word, right? Because if you're also trying to figure this out while balancing the rest of your entire life, are kind of literally and figuratively underwater. And so you hear the same way you hear when you're underwater. So your lips are moving, but not all the sound is coming through. And so, we have to do this in a way that is deeply patient and somewhat repetitive and with a level of grace. And I think also not in a bookish way, right? So not starting from this language of okay, everybody, get out your business plan, right? Because I'm that's just a bunch of crap. But very, very few operating businesses have a perfect business plan that they're dusting off and saying this means I need to modify chapter 3. That means chapter 3 needs some mild tweaking. No, they wrote their business plan with you alone, if they have a business plan. And so meet people in the honest way of where they are. If they're talking to you, they need something. So just say, I see Chef Reese is smiling, right? So what do you need? How can you help?
Brian, I don't know if I'm stepping out of line here, but I'd love to ask a follow-on question to this, Director Whitfield. This commentary is amazing. Brian, feel free to shut me up if this was not the idea. Director Whitfield, thank you so much for joining, and forgive me for jumping in like this, but I'm super curious. I work with a lot of DC-based entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, and small business owners, nonprofit leaders. So I'm feeling a lot of, not nearly as much as you're getting a sense for, but I'm certainly feeling some of the pain that you're talking about here, and needs. I'm curious specifically on this topic that you've brought up of kind of, more appropriate, specifically for this time period, if not for kind of whatever comes next, but specifically for this time period. Are there initiatives or programs that you or other parts of the DC government are putting together that are helping to kind of address that need of being where small business owners and entrepreneurs are at, especially now, together, that are more around that, and not necessarily money, but also sort of the support?
Well, I think everyone's trying to figure it out. I think, yes, here's what everyone understands, is that the need is greater than what's available, right? So let me say to everyone here that on the 20th, there is a pool of resources that's opening for businesses in Ward 7 and 8, a pool of $800,000 in grant funds for businesses in 7 and 8. So if you know a business in 7 and 8, then please send them to please apply to DHCD for this is up to $10,000. You know, the DEMPED just closed their $25 million pool of funds. You know, I think that we know that small businesses need help. You know, I will editorialize that I get very frustrated that there seems to be this sort of visceral response by federal government to like give big bailouts to giant companies and layer small businesses with more and more debt, right? So like, you know, but there's not an endless amount of grant money out there, but we know that we need to figure more things out. And I don't know where the next layer of support is coming. You know, we told as many people as we possibly could to apply for the SBA disaster relief funds, and then the PPP, which is an imperfect source that we hope will get fixed in many ways. You know, I think that there are a million things that can always be better, but we're trying to get as many people aware of as many things that are out there. You know, our team found, you know, 20 different grant pools that are available right now, from Verizon to Facebook, and we put them all up on the mayor's website, coronavirus.dc.gov. So I say go there, because if we find them, we put them up in one place, because my God, you don't need to be looking in a million places for a million grants that are going to be highly competitive. But I think the most honest thing that I can say is that we know that we don't know. Like, no one, we haven't been through this yet. And we know that we are going to have to do innovative things that we've never done before. You know, I think that part of the mayor's ReOpen DC committee was about getting as many people from as many different industries together to pool as many different ideas together, is because I think that we know we wanted to get a lot of different thoughts out there about what is it that can be done and that should be done. And sometimes, you know, and I'm the mayor, I'm the deputy mayor's teletown halls, I have been known to say, like, hey, sometimes you might call us and we might have to say we don't know, you know, and we might have to try and connect you to people that we think might know. But the most honest thing sometimes is that we don't know, but that we will try.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for that. That's very refreshing to hear from a government leader. I mean, and it's really all I'm saying is that I'm glad that you acknowledge that. That's wonderful to hear.
Well, and I also think that I'd like to applaud Director Whitfield and other folks that I've talked to. You know, it seems like they really are casting a wide net of perspectives, and it's not just the people who often populate around their conference room. I think that they've cast a wide net. Director Whitfield, could you talk a little bit more about those efforts with ReOpen DC, just to make sure that you were hearing from a lot of different stakeholders and the surveys that were distributed and everything else?
Sure. So the mayor had, I don't know all the subcommittees, but so the mayor had, there were 12 subcommittees on the ReOpen DC committee. I was one of the co-chairs of the small business and retail subcommittee. And so we were, you know, I can talk about what our subcommittee did. And I was looking to see, I did not have it. And again, on the DC, coronavirus.dc.gov, you can find all the lists of the different subcommittees. But I will say that, you know, for every subcommittee, there was a government chair and then 2 community co-chairs. And then, you know, any number of maybe 20 different community members that, thank you, Kate, that would then sort of looking at the issue of how to reopen the city in a safe way. And now the emphasis is like, what would the phasing be based on the advice from Johns Hopkins University of a phased reopening, looking at different industries and then looking at the contacts and the risk factors and then making recommendations. And so even within small business, we then sort of looked at different types of retail. Now food was separated, food and restaurants were separated out of this category of small business, and they were put into their own category. And Kathy Hollinger and Ernest Cheppa, I think, were on that committee. But then, then we sort of reached out to, I think there were 70 different conversations, all of them with numerous different stakeholders saying like, what are the issues that you're feeling and how would you recommend, and in your business, what would the issues be, to then sweep up into recommendations about what would safe phasings be in terms of in different industries to say, how would we safely reopen? And so the issue on in this instance were really around the safety factors in terms of what would be the considerations. Some of the ideas, and I think we've seen in the press, that have come open is like, if we know that social distancing is such a factor in the way that we are engaging in retail engagements, could we open up sidewalks? Could we even open up parking lanes to then extend spaces out so that restaurants or that retail could take over some pieces of the public space to be able to operate safely in a socially distant way? How might we then be able to, control traffic flow so that people would be able to flow in a way that wouldn't impede the public? And then really then knowing that Department of Health, looking at the different types of phasing, have models around what happens at different levels of opening to increased illness and then death rates. Because undeniably, when you increase contact, you increase sickness and you increase mortality. And so, we have to be 100% clear of two facts, which is that with increased contact, there is increased sickness and increased death. And the other trends that seem undeniable is that African Americans and other people of color seem to be disproportionately suffering and dying from COVID-19. And so that we cannot open or have a contemplation of opening without a conversation about the cost. And so an economic conversation cannot be had without a conversation about the full cost. And that includes the cost of life. And also then the ability of the health system to balance the corresponding impact of increased contact. And so it's a very complex, complex system. I will say that the mayor, the two co-chairs are Susan Reif and Michael Chertoff, and then one of the check-ins that they did with the committee. And now I'm just nerding out a little bit because they called us all together, and Dr. Anthony Fauci actually came and briefed us. And listen, I can't even pretend that I did not go like in full fangirl. Oh my God, it's Anthony Fauci. And I was up in the room, but I texted my husband. I was like, Anthony Fauci's on the Zoom call. Oh my God, get over here. And he came and peeked on it. But once I fully, I kind of composed myself and tried to sit and be, somewhat appropriate. He really praised the mayor and the city for our approach and for sticking to the science and specifically, Mayor Bowser and Dr. Nesbitt for really, keeping the science in the front of mind of the things that we were doing. And look, it is really hard because, we know that there are real economic impacts when people cannot make money. And people have lost jobs and people are wondering what that is going to mean for their livelihoods. But, and this is, as a person, but also as a former business owner, the risk of the loss of life is, in the Maslow's hierarchy. I think the mayor weighs that very seriously. And I will say that unlike other political leaders, I believe that our mayor is extremely clear-headed about what is important in regard to that.
So there's an article in the Post this morning talking about how, and I won't get into the statehood discussion right now, but just how it seems like there's a much greater collaboration across the regional entities because DC and its surrounding counties are much more in the same boat than the other extremities of both Maryland and Virginia. Do you have any examples of how that collaboration is working, or is that accurate to say? Because it seems like it's almost like the DMV region versus the rest of the states in a way in terms of the reopening plan.
Well, I will say that at a press event on Friday, Cory Booker referred to Governor Bowser as a leader in the COVID-19 crisis, and it felt very appropriate. I think that our mayor has responded, with the measure, the dignity and grace of any governor out there. And she is coordinating and talking with our neighbors to the north and to the south. And I think that our borders are more porous than the Maryland and the Virginia borders. Our federal resources were, obscenely, lower as a city that pays taxes like, per capita 22 other states, pay taxes per capita like DC. And for us to get the federal resources like a territory is pretty criminal. But I think that, I know that Mayor Bowser is working with Maryland, Virginia regularly to make sure that we're aware and trying to do many things consistently. Now I know that they have, different timelines with regard to some of their opening schedules. And I think that's, I think that, we're aware of some of those differences, but I do think that we stay in regular touch with both of those states.
Sure, that all makes sense. I think right before you joined, I mentioned that, it's in some ways as we mark off the ninth week or so of enduring each new challenge as it comes, it is in some ways, I think, hopeful to be talking about reopening, that it would have been wholly inappropriate 6 weeks ago or even 4 weeks ago. And just because we are talking about it doesn't mean we're ready. And I think that even a casual glance on Saturday afternoon when it was as beautiful it was realizes that people are chomping at the bit to go back to normal in some cases. I'm not going to ask you to predict the future because that's not fair. But what kinds of things do you think people can expect if and when we are ready to start the eventual reopening of the city?
Well, I think you can expect clear communication around the decrease in the incidence of, of the number of people who are contracting. I think that we are definitely, going to need to have two kinds of conversations. I think we are really anxious for this normal that you talk about. And I think that we have to just release that. I was talking to a woman today who said, we just gotta just kiss change flush on the mouth, right? And I thought that was super funny, but it's kind of true. Like, we are not going back to whatever we are missing nostalgically. So I think once we can kind of sit fully in the reality of now, that will be helpful for us emotionally, right? And then I think the other piece that must be an essential part of this conversation is that when we talk about this reopening, we have to have a conversation about these businesses that we want to visit need to be able to be operating sustainably. And so visiting a business that is able in the new order of things to do X percentage of its previous sales is a short-term visit if other things don't change. So if you have a food place that you selected to go to and they can now currently do 20% of what they used to be able to do, but they are expected to pay 100% of their rent and a living wage to everybody who currently works there, then this is a fleeting visit. So visit them, for they shall not be there much longer. And so we need to talk about the health also of the businesses that we visit and what we need to do to make those businesses healthy and sustainable and viable. Because I think that is the other piece that is the closing of this circle. Because otherwise, then we're just doing this reopening for optics and feelings, right? And we have to talk about what this means. So what is the shoring up or the loosening down? Where is the pressure valve release so that this actually works? But no one is in it for the practice, as they say. And so how are we making sure that they're not just working themselves to literal and figurative death?
Thank you. I know there've been a couple questions in the comments here talking about one speaks directly to access to capital. And I know I'm very proud to say we partnered with your department back in February for our inaugural Capital Access Expo. That program in conjunction with our Inner City Capital Connections program that we do, it's really a focus of what the Tioga Center does. Access to capital is something that I think in many ways is going to be described as before and after this crisis. It was a problem before, it's an even bigger problem now. What do you think might be done in that area to make sure that it's fully inclusive and also accessible to business owners who, for all intents and purposes, have had their assumptions blown to bits and their projections for the year looking a whole lot different than they set out the year thinking in Q1?
Well, I think people, our business owners are smart people, right? And I think they're all looking at their numbers. They're looking at what's reasonable. I think many people have already started renegotiating leases with their landlords. I think people have to, know what works. They're not running back out to the market just, to burn calories. So we got to think about, is this actually viable? And if it's not viable, then we have to have these conversations, on the front end. There are entire back offices looking at this, and then we have to amplify these conversations, because if this is not working, people love to eat, people love to visit these places, and candidly, all of these cute places that we love to go to and shop at and visit are the things that help amplify our real estate market and make our neighborhoods cute and walkable and desirable. Like they're all interconnected. If COVID-19 has taught us nothing, it is the degree to which everything and everyone is deeply interconnected. So, I think there was a period of time in the very, very beginning where we were all very shell-shocked, right? But as that starts to wear off, the DC Pro Bono Law Center is offering trainings on renegotiating your lease. The conversation about how to have that conversation, the time to have that conversation is right now. I think that if we're looking at, how to reopen safely, it is right now. The thought about how to maybe pivot and partner with other people is right now. We have to be, looking at, we're doing a Build Back Better series where we're talking to people that are pivoting, looking at the elements of their businesses and saying, what can I have that I can do slightly different, slightly better, or entirely different, entirely uniquely. And then I think in terms of also just releasing the pieces that are no longer relevant. Businesses that were focused on gathering have got to recontemplate, right? And I think that is where we have to really think about this. So it used to be that that's what made it so expensive and valuable and palatable. So it used to be it was the smartest money to have this tiniest kitchen and the biggest front of your house. Well, maybe that is not the case anymore. And maybe it's a shift, because now maybe you need a big kitchen and a small front of house. Like we have to think about what the reality in the future is now. The people who are going to survive are accepting the current and the future and releasing the past. And I think that is very difficult, especially when the past really worked and you liked the past. And it sucks, especially if you were making a lot of money in the past. But if you were a nightclub that used to fill up with so many people, like that is probably not available to you in 2020. Because even if that were going to be allowed, you're not going to have the customer confidence for that. I'm guessing, right? And so if that is not likely, then it is time for entrepreneurs to do what we do.
I think that's
the next thing.
One. The green one?
They say, yeah.
So just to kind of give an example of that, from a personal example, if you had told me that I would teach my class via Zoom back in January, I would have said, fine, let's cancel the classes. It was not something I have any interest in doing. I don't even really like doing PowerPoints. I am a markers, maybe chalk and blackboard, if possible, educator, and have been for 15 years. I had to, right now, I'm rewriting the curriculum for the fall and trying to prepare for if we have to do video instruction. I'm choosing not to get frustrated by that. It's a complete upheaval of everything I've ever done, but I realized that in order to really meet my customers where they are, I need to figure out how to do that, or else I'm going to become obsolete. Now, should I probably have been doing that anyway? Maybe. Was there a significant trend gathering steam that you were going to have a little bit more tech in the classroom? Sure. Did I have the right to ignore that while I could? Yes. And I think that at this point, a lot of businesses that we've spoken with are in a similar position the folks who are, I think, best positioned coming out of this thing, it doesn't even have to do with capital necessarily. A couple of the founders we've spoken to said, look, we got our teams together and we said the business that we had 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago no longer exists. Everybody take a deep breath, come to terms with that. This is the first meeting of our new business. Everybody's been touched by this thing. And in every industry, it's happening to every single person who engages with that industry. I think that innovation is going to drive the decisions that in terms of who's able to thrive in this scenario. And I know that's difficult. Chef, to your question, to the capital access piece, you know, in some ways, if you think from the lender's perspective also, their whole industry got completely turned upside down as well. Even all of the different ratios and everything that they were using to qualify debt before has also changed. But you need to be able to make a convincing argument that your pivots and your new business will align with their new business in a partnership. And that's not easily done. And I think that, you know, for those that were able to attend in February, we spent a lot of time with jargon sheets and everything else, understanding the funding ecosystem as it was on February 22nd. I think it's safe to say we probably need a new set of terms and a new set of strategies to deal with the new reality. And I think that to your point, you're talking about funding the real small business owners. I hear you, believe me. And I think that in some cases it could be the small business owners who are able to think a little bit outside of their norm. You know, there are certain restaurants that we work with that they just didn't really engage with delivery because it was kind of a pain and the margins weren't good. And that was their right while they were still making money. Those folks are singing a different tune these days. You know, that they are trying to figure out how they can at least hang on for now, and or they're making a total pivot. You know, I'm just making this up, but you know, if you were a corporate caterer and people aren't going into the office anymore, then you need to find a new revenue stream. You need to find new customers and a new way to get to them. And I think that's where a lot of the energy can and should be spent, I think. And then if you're making money and you're able to show that, and you have a better plan than you did a month ago or a better plan than you did 2 months ago, the funders are going to require that you have more to say than simply, here was my business in January of 2020 and here's where it is now.
Yeah, you know, let me say one thing about the financing, because I think smart ideas can usually find some financing, but I also think that this crisis has also underscored just the harsh reality of the stark differences that different populations have getting financing. And it seems to track perfectly with who gets COVID-19, which is like a double dose of danger for this pandemic, right? So if disenfranchised communities are getting sicker off of COVID, and these are the same communities with lower access to capital, it puts us in just a more precarious situation as we try to build an equitable response. And if your credit was shot before you went into the pandemic, you know, it makes it tough. It makes a response tough. And if we try to think about financing mechanisms that sort of fly in the face of traditional lending to address this, it becomes even more challenging, right? I just think it's something I've been struggling with, right? Because in Kristi's perfect world, and I'm just going to put this into the universe so that somebody smarter than I am on this phone call, looking at you, Ronette Myers. I was like, we see, you know, a potential for, you know, some vacancies in the future, Washington, D.C., right? What we don't want to see is, you know, sort of big swatches of land bought up in a fire sale, right? So what I would love would be for some kind of a, you know, tenant opportunity to purchase, but for commercial, right? So if you've been in business in a location, maybe you get the first opportunity to purchase like a commercial version of that, but then also with some innovative financing in place that doesn't rely on you having, you know, 20% of that not sitting in the bank, because I don't know, I actually don't have $400,000 sitting in the bank to make a down payment on something that costs an arm and a leg. So that the people who have been investing in corridors for all these years could actually own the land. And then we can start thinking about business owners creating wealth, right? Because what I actually think is really important in the next phase of recovery. I am so sorry.
Which I actually did too. And so,
sir, not right now.
And so, that's what I want.
It's okay, Director Whitfield. I partially am really curious to hear what was so exciting over there. So it's okay. I can totally appreciate it.
A lot happening right here.
Well, Director Whitfield, let me ask you this question. And I just gave an interview before this call, and this is what I said. I'd be curious in your take on it. I was really hoping you could bump to after I spoke with you, because I was interested in how you might direct my thoughts. But it seems to me like we've struggled in those who either own small businesses or support them as our jobs. We've struggled with getting attention to all of the challenges that are in front of our small business owners. You know, yes, the access to capital piece, the so-called unfunded, underfunded businesses or unfundable businesses. It seems like this crisis has not necessarily created new problems. It's just made existing problems that much more acute. The only positive that I can think about this is that the attention is on us now. That it's hard to pick up a newspaper and not have an article or two or even more talking about the plight of small businesses and how these are the challenges they're facing. Is it possible that there's some optimism that we might see more creative financing options, that we might be able to see a kind of a recalibrating of the ecosystem such that small business owners and the challenges that they have to overcome on a daily basis will no longer be a kind of an unknown thing in the public sphere?
I hope so. I mean, maybe temporarily, right? So there are things that DSLBD has been doing for the 2 years that I've been here. The mayor has done, great things to support burgeoning businesses. Year after year, we have supported, nascent businesses east of the river through the Dream Grant program.
Yeah.
We have done things like build our access to capital and leveraging the loans through, the CDFIs to make sure that our small businesses can get the loans they need in ways that, have been unprecedented. And we've done it sort of quietly and methodically, right? And as the city turns its head to look at what small businesses do, we know that everybody's lifting up small business right now. But we also know that there's sort of like a disaster wheel of fortune, and we have short attention spans. So, I hope so. I hope that people will sort of turn their head and look at what we care about every day. but I also know that sometimes something else might happen, and then you know, people are sort of like, oh, look, shiny. So I'm always excited when people want to look and see what DSLBD cares about every day. It's hard sometimes to hold people's attention when the world out there can be sort of a tumultuous place. So on an optimistic day, I say yes, we will learn our lessons and we will see that we are interconnected, and we will see that we are going to sort of do better by our small businesses, and we are going to have fair commercial rents that are going to allow people to sort of be here and continue to serve commercial corridors. And then, you know, the economy turns up and we're like, woohoo, make money, make money, make money, make money. So I mean, it's hard to know. It's just, you know, I think mostly yes. And, you know, and on the days that it sort of turns the other way, there's my team saying, wait, hold on now. Does that seem like that makes sense? Let's, you know, I know, you know, I got chastised because we were someplace and I was like, this is a very exciting, burgeoning place. But what you see is a lot of new places. Looks like churn to me where things have failed. And they're like, wow, director, you're like a wet blanket. I was like, I'm not a wet blanket. I'm just saying that while this place is hot, you're going to be able to sell a lot of like, oh, foot traffic. But like on these different conversations, I'm now saying to people like, hey, the things that you used to sell in your corridor, like foot traffic and high density, are really scary to people now. So what do you think your property value is? I think your rent should go. So,
hey, this is Enid, and I need to interject here because you and Brian have been great and you all are amazing. I want to say something. As somebody who is a senior entrepreneur, and I mean that I am 64 years old. Yeah, that picture looks good, but it was taken 4 years ago. Having said that, it was both Brian and Kristi who said, oh, I mean, for anybody that is lacking hope, that is much, much younger than me, these are people that will give you hope and give you life and inspiration, as you've heard on this call. And I've heard Director Whitfield in her more official capacity. And you guys just do not know how blessed we are to have her, like, be, you know, breaking it down in these directions. And having said that, I think one of the things that I'm finding, because guess what, you know, Brian, Kristi, Donna Harris tapped me to do some work for her for 2 businesses. So, and her corner. So yay me. And I'm doing social justice work. So God bless America. I'll get it done. But having said all that, the point I'm making is that the mechanics, one of the things that Donna and her corner are working on is the PPP loans. A lot of people, especially a lot of the businesses, and I wish Kyle was on this call. I don't know much about the other Main Street guy, but a lot of the smaller businesses that do really well, they're not, I mean, Kyle is at least working to get the technical acumen up for a lot of them, because a lot of them were cash sales only and we're doing things, you know, in a more antiquated way. And I think a lot of the people on this call, I mean, they like the mechanics. I mean, I think they love the heartfeltness from you, Director, you know, I could say Director Whitfield, you know, I call you Kristi, but Director Whitfield, and from you, Brian. And I wanted to just compliment you both. But I think one of the things I'd like to find out if there's a top 3 that people in the short term could be doing to kind of like focusing on, because you guys have a lot of resources for everybody and you're on these calls. You know, I'm on every call because, you know, like, you know, my crew, you know, Jeanette Mobley, the whole political crew, all that stuff, you know, but having said that, I do want to see, you know, for the people that are on this call, especially people that have businesses, if they're top 3s where they could go to or what you would advise, Director Whitfield and then Brian.
So I would say really top 1 is coronavirus.dc.gov, because every government agency is putting their information there because we know people are busy. And so everyone is putting their most recent thing there. And I think that, you know, whether it is a resource for business, a resource for, you know, for individuals, a resource for unemployment. All of the government agencies are putting their stuff there. So you can go to one place to get that information. And I think that that's, you know, that's really the very best place, because there's so much flying at people all the time. And, you know, there's so many different government agencies that, you know, this mayor has done so many things right through this crisis. And this is just yet another one of those things, but making sure that we have one place to go so that you're not spread in yet another million directions. That is the place to go. For if you want information, the latest information, all of the information that comes out, you know, on pressers, whatever it is, the latest thing that she just said, that is where to go. The last thing that happened in government, coronavirus@dc.gov. Sir?
So I'll also make a plug here for those that are on the call and are not familiar with the Yoga Center and what we do. When the crisis is not happening, we offer monthly gatherings for small business owners on a variety of topics. And we also have students who are entrepreneurship minors who take on projects for local business owners. So ordinarily we would be working on projects all semester and interacting with as many business owners as we can. We had to throw our business plan out the window with everybody else's come March. But we will put a link in the chat if you want to join our newsletter that will let you know how to stay in touch with us. In addition, on that topic, we've had a ton of students come back to us and say, hey, you know, my internship got canceled for the summer. I love the stuff we learned in your class and the business we work with. Is there anything I can do for the summer to help these businesses navigate this crisis? So if that's of interest to you at all, we work very closely with our career services department in the Bush School of Business. We referred over 50 internships just this year to them for local business owners. So if you need some help, or even we have our expert faculty who have made themselves available to sort out specific problems. So whether it be a tax issue with the accounting department or marketing issue with the marketing department or something like that, we want to continue to make ourselves a resource to the small business community. And we'd love to interact with as many of you as possible. We have done one-on-one consultations for the duration. So you'll see a link to that in the newsletter, and my team and I will be happy to talk with you. In some cases, it's probably a different conversation now than it would have been 8 weeks ago. And we're excited about helping you continue to navigate what's going on. But I'd like to say a very special thank you to Director Whitfield for joining us tonight. Your perspective is invaluable, as well as somebody noted in the chat. You know, you bring it all home. You make it very real and accessible, and it's not just, you know, a bunch of talking heads on TV telling us you know, what's on the script. I think that your ability to connect with our business owners is one of your many talents, and especially valuable in light of what we're all facing. So look forward to continuing to work with you and your team and figure out other ways we can collaborate to add value to the small business owners around us.